Hello, my name is Izzy. I'm a junior at ETHS.
My name is Ellie. I'm a freshman at ETHS.
And I'm John Kennedy. I'm a long forgotten senior. And we'll just leave it at that.
Okay. We can start out with an easy question.
Okay.
How did you get here today?
By car. And unfortunately, by a car that I'd like to get rid of because I used it for years to tow a boat. So it's a big old 4Runner that gobbles too much gas. And so I'd like to, as soon as I sell the boat, I'm going to get rid of that thing.
Cool.
Why are you running for city council?
Because I was born here. I moved back here 40 years ago, raised 3 kids, all went through, ETHS and all the schools. And I've been observing how the city is managing itself. I started 3 software businesses, raised the money, organized the team, kept them alive. They were all successful, but nobody was a home run. And as a result of doing that, I developed some skills. Financially, how do you run a team, organize a team? How do you develop policy, projections, vision, mission, that type of thing. And since I retired a year and a half ago, I've just been observing the city. I've been involved a little bit with city stuff. Back in 2007, I was involved with saving the Civic Center, organized that, and got a referendum with 83% of the people basically saying stay in the building. Fast forward today, it's back at that table. Essentially what I'm seeing the city do from a budget point of view, from a financial point of view, from making decisions that just don't make any sense. I decided to, instead of trying to throw stones from outside the castle, get inside the castle, because nobody was listening to me from the outside of the castle. How's that?
That's a good answer. So everybody has special traits and gifts they can use to change the world. Thinking about your skills and strengths, what is your climate action superpower?
I'm an innovator. That's what you have to do as a software. Creating software is not like taking an invention out of the lab and molding it. You basically continue to shape it and adjust as you go. In climate stuff, I've been advocating for the last at least 4 or 5 years, ever since Biden came out with the IRA, pushing financial incentives for cities, direct payments to cities, to do green energy projects. And I was a strong advocate of geothermal for the Civic Center, for the Noise Center, for Evanston Township High School, for the Crown Center. You can keep going, all the major buildings, and it's still practical today. In fact, there was a front page of the business section. I get a paper. I still read papers. I get a paper in the New York Times, and on the front page of the business section, there's a geothermal drilling device. Towers, big pipes like this. Read the story. The city of Vienna, Austria, is installing geothermal as a community geothermal project to basically heat and cool 20,000 homes. It's a big deal. I don't know if Evanston has 20,000 homes. I think it does. But community geothermal is, there was a whole department of energy devoted to community geothermal. And it's a practical idea. Now, how it would be implemented in Evanston, you know, it's it's still a technology in development, but that doesn't mean you can't work with it. And there are a smattering of geothermal. The Dawes History Museum down on the lakefront, geothermal. There are dozens of homes in Evanston that are geothermal. And I'm a strong believer because over time, it's much more cost effective.
What are the two most important issues you are focused on in your campaign as a challenger? Why?
Well, I'm not a challenger. There's an open seat. But financial management and responsibility, fiscal responsibility. And then the biggest topic right now is Envision Evanston. There's rezoning. We need to do rezoning. But I don't recall anybody in Evanston asking for more density. Now, that's not to say there shouldn't be development. That's not to say we don't have a housing crisis. But, Evanston is already pretty dense. It's right up there with Chicago. And then, it's about 10, 11,000 people per square mile. You then drop down to, suburbs of Skokie, for example, at 6, and Wilmette at 5, and so on. So, Evanston's already dense, and so that's another issue. And the third biggest thing is transparency. Too many decisions are being made behind closed doors, and it's just wrong. The fait accompli in front of the council, despite what rational arguments one might pose, is just astounding to me. So I had to throw my hat in the ring.
So many of the policies before council are future focused, like Envision Evanston, the Healthy Buildings Ordinance, and CARP. These policies will have a bigger impact on our lives than anyone else, yet youth voices are often drowned out. How will you elevate youth voices if you're elected?
Well, I'd like to see a lot more youth voices. I'd like to see them, standing up and protesting or marching in favor of key issues. And I'm encouraged that you guys have gotten together, and I'd like to see more involvement. I don't see it now. Now, if you're asking me how could I encourage it, if I do become an alder person, and I'm talking, just off the cuff right now, why not have a youth council, advisory council? I'm sure there's some Evanston high school kids that live in the 3rd Ward. And so, I could put out a shout out and basically say, I'd like to have a meeting. I'd like to have an organization meeting, see who shows up. If 10 people show up, those 10 we can work with. If 100 people show up, that 100 needs to elect 10 people, because it's hard to have a committee of 100 people. You got to get down to, an organization where you can talk. And so that 100 would have to organize themselves and say, all right, these 8 to 10 or 12 people will represent us. And it could start there. I mean, there are a lot of issues. I'll give you one. Bike safety. I rode a bike for 15 years. I had an office downtown Evanston. Rode up Hinman in the middle of winter. Wasn't fun sometimes, but it was safe and ecological and environmental. So, this is the kind of issue that we could talk about. I mean, where are the safe streets? Where are the streets that are not safe? How can we change the traffic patterns to encourage high school kids to ride their bike instead of mom and dad dropping them off every day?
All right. 80% of carbon emissions come from the building
But
sector.
now, one more thing.
Oh,
Hold me to the council group for the young ones if I do get elected. call me up and say, John.
We have it on video.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
You're on record.
All right, keep going.
80% of carbon emissions come from the building sector, and a vast majority of these emissions come from Evanston's 500 largest buildings. The proposed Healthy Buildings Ordinance would mandate that these buildings make energy-efficient improvements, procure renewable energy, and reduce on-site emissions, and has provisions to ensure that it is done while maintaining affordability. Do you support the proposed Healthy Buildings Ordinance? Why or why not?
I do, but it has to come with some realistic boundaries to it. For example, a lot of those 500 buildings are 100 years old. They're heated a lot by hot water boilers. My own house is a hot water boiler. I just had, a 20-year kind of tune-up and maintenance. And I talked with the plumber about how could we do a geothermal or a heat pump. And the problem in this area is the technology's not there yet for the heat pumps to pull enough heat to heat hot water radiators. If it was forced air, it's easy. You just swap out your furnace then with a couple of heat pumps. But when the house is already piped and structured, running, even for a single-family house, running, vents and air intakes and back and forth, it's very expensive. The buildings that we're talking about renovating, there might be 40 units in them. It would cost, one estimate that I heard was $40,000 per unit. Now, the problem is, even if the owner had the money, they'd have to make it up somehow. And we're already talking about affordability in Evanston. And if it costs more to because of the building ordinance that we had to go to forced air, where's it going to come from? It's not coming from the Trump administration any longer. So, my solution to that is more technology. The geothermal is certainly one option, and the reason for that, different than a aired heat pump, and I'm getting technical, I'm sorry, but trying to extract heat from minus 10 degree outdoor weather doesn't work very well. Extracting heat from 55 degree water that's coming up from the ground works really well. And you can supplement and change over. It just takes time, and the technology isn't there yet. So am I aspirationally in favor of the Healthy Buildings Ordinance? Absolutely. Should the big buildings downtown consider it? Absolutely. Ours is the guy that owns the Six Flat down on Hinman Avenue. Is he going to be able to afford it? I don't think so.
To kind of
round it out.
So you have indicated your support for the proposed Chicago Avenue bike lane, but have expressed concerns about the effect on parking.
That's right.
As is the case on this particular project, parking and ADA improvements are competing for limited space. How do you justify prioritizing parking, and do you think parking is a productive use of urban space?
Why, you said ADA.
ADA improvements, ADA compliance.
ADA compliance
So like expanding the sidewalks.
The bike plan I saw was not expanding this sidewalk. The sidewalks, from what I walked the sidewalks in the third ward. I walked the sidewalks on Chicago Avenue. They're wide enough for ADA people. My brother-in-law was in a wheelchair most of his life, so I know what the issue is. Trust me. I fought for a better ADA, less expensive ADA ramp at the dog beach. The problem with the bike lane is that it hurts. It's not an ADA issue. it is parking for some residents on the very south end of Chicago Avenue, where they have some 30 spots now that will disappear. But there's a solution to that. But the city is not considering it, or they're considering it reluctantly in terms of getting rid of some landscaping on the west side. I mean, this wasn't my idea. I said, look, you got 7 feet of landscape over there. Just extend it that way and you can have your parking. But the other key thing is the parking for some sections where store owners, which are already being hurt. I mean, I hear all the time people talking about storefront issues, vacant issues, are and the need for that. And here we are hurting a whole subgroup of store owners by eliminating the parking, and I won't name anything, but there are restaurants where people would pull up, get out, run in, get their carry-out order, and go. That's all going to be gone, which will hurt their business. Now, can the city accommodate these things by being a little more flexible? I would hope so. The reality is, I don't think they're going to get the $13 million from the government, and so I don't think the bike project's going forward. Trump does not like bike lanes in New York, along with, congestion pricing. So I don't think there's going to be money there. I could be wrong. Where they should put, if that doesn't work out, where they should put the bike lane is down Hinman, which I used to go up and down all the time. And there are things you can do to Hinman, leaving the parking, that still encourage bike lanes. So.
And then just to round out, at ETHS we learn the value of teamwork through sports and group projects. From those lessons, it's clear that the City Council isn't always the best example of teamwork. If elected, what can you and your colleagues do to have a more productive collaboration as a City Council?
Well, one of the problems with the teamwork aspect is that there's a law in the state of Illinois called the Open Meetings Act. And there's a reason for it. There's a reason that we've had 3 governors in jail. I mean, you need to get things transparent. But at the same time, when you put people up on a dais, and that's all the communication that they can talk with each other on, is it's a public standing situation. They can't get in a room and discuss, how to go about X, Y, Z. So there's that as a fact. It's not going to change. But you can get around that by spending the time and reaching out to various people and basically saying, what do you think about this? And why, and encouraging collaboration on solutions. Part of that is you got to look downstream and see what's coming up. Things that are surprised on you, in 1 week, which seems to be the modus operandi of the current city council, where everything's a special order of business. Rush, 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 when there isn't any reason for that. Dialogue takes time. Consensus takes time. Community dialogue takes even more time. And so that's what we got to encourage.